and again, I think this is again more of a libertarian or a position, which is what really is wrong with sweatshops.
Well, I mean, I think actually as humans, we can look at them and say there is something wrong with people living in poverty and having low living standards. But that doesn't mean that the answer is that we have to get rid of that by fiat. Instead, we have to get rid of that by creating greater opportunity. So when I look around the world, I can't see any country that is relatively wealthy today that didn't go through something like a sweatshop stage of economic development first. And by a sweatshop stage, I don't literally mean garment factories, although many places had them, but I mean poor wages, harsh working conditions, long hours. You don't go from pre-industrial poverty. The history of humanity, right, is on about $2 to $3 a day maximum living standard. You don't go from that to advanced standard of living without going through this transition period.
Sure.
And the sweatshops themselves are part of what leads to the higher living standards. So proximate causes of higher living standards: human capital, physical capital, and technology. Underlying causes are better institutions of capitalism versus socialism and things like this, but the proximate ones. So once you have relatively good institutions, you need to accumulate these things. Well, what do sweatshops bring? Physical capital, technology, and relative to staying on the farm, opportunities to build your human capital. So this process in Great Britain plays out from, it's called about a 150-year period from the late 1700s to early to mid 20th century before your post-sweatshop stage of development. For the United States, it's shorter, closer to 100 years, early 1830s to World War II-ish. And I grew up in this area. My hometown was Haverhill, Massachusetts, the shoe city for its 19th century women's shoe productions. And my undergraduate was at University of Massachusetts Lowell, among all those old factories. Well, why was our process quicker? Well, where did we get the technology? We stole it from Great Britain to start with. Where did we get the physical capital? Actually, British investors financed part of this. So when I think about the sweatshop countries post-World War II, this is your Hong Kong, Singapore, Japan to some extent, although they're the weird one, Taiwan, Korea, all of them, it's about a generation that they go from pre-industrial. All of those were, except Japan, were pre-industrial societies at the end of World War II. $2, $3, $4 standard of living. Right. And they're all wealthy first world nations by 1980. Japan was decimated, obviously, by the war, which is what pushed its standards back down, and it rebounded quickly. But the other ones had no history of being this rich country. Why did it go so much faster? Well, they get investment from the United States and other development countries that pushed capital in, pushed technology in. Whole process goes quicker, and they were all relatively economically free countries. That same process is playing out today in the countries that we see with sweatshops: China, Vietnam, India, Indonesia. So the first edition of Out of Poverty came out a little over a decade ago. And I just finished the copy edits for a second edition that's supposed to come out at the end of this year. And one of the things we did in the second edition is we went back and we looked at all the countries where we identified sweatshops and the wages they paid from 1995 to 2010, which was the data in the first edition of the book. And we said, how many of those countries have sweatshops reported in this next 10-year period? Answer is a lot of them drop off. You don't hear about it anymore. And of the ones that do, what happened to the sweatshop wages? And what you find is the sweatshop wages that are sweatshops in the 2010s pay vastly more than what were sweatshops in the 1990s and 2000s. Our definition of it expanded. And most of these countries experienced sustained increases in economic growth, reductions in poverty rates, decreases in child labor. Basically, the sweatshops, the transition is happening even quicker in a richer, more industrial world. Now, they're not a panacea. If you have crappy institutions that order economic activity, you don't have secure property rights, you're very corrupt, you don't have great freedoms, sweatshops are going to be like a crutch that's the least bad option. Workers choose to work in them because it's better than their alternatives. So we still shouldn't take them away. But it's going to be hard for that to generate a lot of economic growth. But for places like Vietnam that have been liberalizing a lot over the decades while it has sweatshops, they're just part of this transition that brings you to the higher living standards. So that's why the book's called Out of Poverty.
Right. So it just like, and I mean, as would make sense to a lot of us, this is just some nasty tasting medicine to get towards like more and stronger economic output and greater economic freedom, right? Is like, hey, nobody likes the idea of having to work in a sweatshop, but the alternative is either unemployment and greater poverty, correct?
Yeah, I mean, because we feel, let's say, icky buying the products of child labor, right? Why do children work? Children work because their parents are desperately poor trying to feed, clothe, and shelter their family. That's why kids work. As soon as families get past the level where they can provide the calories and the food and shelter for the kids, kids drop out of the workforce. So if we see this, they'll go, oh, I don't feel good buying a product of child labor. It didn't end that kid and that family's poverty. It's just ended the way the family was best dealing with it. So we deal with the products they export. Most children who work in the world don't work in manufacturing. Most work in agriculture. Second most work in services. Agriculture, predominantly subsistence agriculture, and certainly not the stuff that's exported internationally. And services, that's like household cleaning services, gardening, things like. Where do you think remuneration for children is better out of these three sectors? It's manufacturing. So when we stop buying the manufactured goods, the children go to other sectors to work where they earn less money, where they build less human capital, and in the case of ag, where their actual injury rates on the job are higher. And the families earn less as a result. So we make their poverty worse. And the same is true of sweatshop workers generally. We should interact with them, buy their products, agitate for greater free trade. If you care about the welfare of sweatshop workers, it's not that you can do nothing. So the process of development is ultimately what cures poverty. That's the big deal. But on the margin, we could lower tariffs against countries so that we can secure bigger gains from trade for both them and us.